Hey, we're going to go ahead and get it kicked off. It is 6:07, so we're already 7 minutes behind. Nobody was brave. Y'all are brave to show up, but nobody's brave enough to sit up here. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm going to cover 3 things briefly. Number one, when I took this job, this was placed in my heart for a lot of different reasons. I have an 11-year-old son. I have a 7-year-old daughter. So digital awareness it's a little bit different for a boy and it's a little bit different for a girl. They're going to talk about some of the things it does to brain chemistry and all. They'll go all that route. But I'll tell you, ultimately, my reason for this is my son, limiting what he has access to, what he sees, trying to keep his eyes pure, that type of stuff. My Wi-Fi is locked down, all my different devices. I called my wife earlier because a new device jumped on my Wi-Fi. I got a notification, and I need to know, is that one of his friends? Is that a new Echo we bought? Because I set internet restrictions immediately. For my daughter, I mean, y'all have to realize social media and what it is doing to these kids and what they're seeing and trying to live up to, and then their expectations aren't met. And on top of that, I call it the depravity of man. I read the news every single day, and it's sick, just to be honest, that somebody here in this area drove 10 hours through the night to Alabama to pick up a 14-year-old girl and drive her back and sexually assault her, and it's terrible. So I applaud y'all and anybody that's going to watch this online on taking the time to do this and learn about how all this can affect you. The last thing is digital fingerprint. And I don't know, either one of y'all going to talk digital fingerprint? Digital fingerprint to me is telling your child what they're putting out there, and it's going to be screenshot. You never know what somebody's going to save for whenever you get to a certain position. So I'm very apprehensive of what I put in emails, what I put in texts, what I put on social media. I have my own personal social media. Some of y'all, I think, are friends with me online. I don't post a whole lot. But once it's out there, it's out there. And I spent 12 years at the secondary level dealing with young girls who put something in a text to a boy that they just downright loved, and that boy sent it to other boys, and y'all can just see how this works out. So my child knows he has no privacy in my house. He has a Gab phone, which only lets him call and text. That's it. No internet access, nothing like that. But as he gets older, he's going to have those types of things. And if I say hand me the phone, he better hand me the phone. And at any point in time, I'm going to go through it. There's a system called Bark. Has anybody heard of Bark? Mm-hmm. That's another one you can look up. There's lots of programs because this is very important. And you've got to be proactive. So I appreciate these two. They're going to introduce themselves. I appreciate them pairing with me. This was placed in my heart. And Ms. Miller, PTA president, shout out, was the one that said, hey, you got to talk to these two people. And they've been a blessing to come up here and meet with me. And they've worked together separately. But so those things, you got boys, what they're seeing, it's not the same as when I was younger. Little girls, what they're putting out there, the expectations they're trying to live up to, and then they don't meet those expectations and everything that goes with that. And then what they put out there that will follow them. And y'all seen probably in the NFL, they're going through, 400,000 emails to see what these people have put out there, and they're losing their jobs now. So those are the 3 things I just wanted to briefly pour into your kids. As they get older, you've got to sit down and talk with them about these things. And I'm just being candid right now that I've done everything possible on my end. And then the other morning I got up and I was reading the news on my phone, and I just clicked up the top to go to a site that I visit all the time, and it recommended a site that I don't go to. And my son's 11, and I had to have a conversation with him, and kind of broke my heart. In the middle of the night, he got my phone, and he knows my passcode to it. That was immediately changed. But there were some things he looked at that I don't look at. So we had that conversation. And so even me, somebody that's on top of this, somebody that's proactive, it happened to me. So don't stick your head in the sand. Don't say my baby. My baby never do that, because we have the Chromebooks and what they search, and and 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders typing things in there that they shouldn't, and we call parents and all that. But so just be aware. So I'll let them introduce themselves. I really appreciate them. So give them a big round of applause.
Thanks for coming. I'm Christina Johntra. We're the company here in town called Neptune Navigate, and we're a company that's committed to creating a safer, better digital world by educating parents, businesses, churches, schools on how to navigate this digital world better. And so specifically, I'll just say shout out to the dads that came, because it's Heavy Mom. Thank you. If I can hug you, it's Asian phone I can't, but dads for coming. Chris.
So, I'll do this a little clumsy. I've got to do it here. I have to do the change the page here and here. But that's one of the things that was funny to me. Wow, that went totally to the wrong place.
Where's the very end?
That's funny. Let's go all the way back here.
This would be great for the video.
It's all right.
Like a professional.
Yeah,
get a
reverse preview.
Close your eyes. All right. One of the things that struck me as interesting when I was putting the slideshow together for both our slideshows was that both Alethia Counseling Center. I'm Chris Legg, by the way. I'm locally known often as the pastor at South Spring Baptist Church, but I'm also the owner and operator of Alethia Family Counseling Center. We've got like 15 therapists just in Tyler now, multiple locations around the state where we do counseling. But it was fascinating to me that both of us, so navigation is we use that term for every one of our seminars at Alethia, that we will say navigating adolescence, navigating children, or navigating parenting, or whatever. And it was fascinating to me that we both have the compass rose in our symbols, and I think that's partially because this imagery of navigation, I think, is really valuable. The mindset that one of the events I do with my children is I take them on a Buffalo River canoe trip a few times during their childhood, typically. And the idea of navigation is powerful, that we know, okay, this is going to be fun, and this is going to be great, and it's also a little dangerous. And part of what makes it fun and great is that it's a little dangerous. And so navigating is acknowledging there are threats, there are rocks, there are rapids, there's water moccasins, and we need to make sure we're making decisions. We're aware of them, we know they're there. I mean, obviously with the Buffalo River, it is an option just not to go. But in today's world, not getting online is not really an option much anymore. I mean, it is up to a certain age, but then at some point, you're going to lose that option. The phones aren't going back in the drawers, they're not going back in the boxes. And as you'll see in a minute, it's probably only going to become more endemic, that these issues are only going to become more endemic. So the more the speed and the power that the river represents, the better prepared and better skilled the adventurer had better be, the person going on. And so both of us have a passion for, and I'll talk about in a minute, even kind of how we both got into some of these conversations. The same person had a huge influence on both of us with some of this stuff. And so as we're thinking about that, we want to jump into the skills. So let's start there.
So as I've talked to parents over the last almost 10 years, one word keeps coming up, and that is a word that might be in your head right now: overwhelmed. Every parent I talk to about technology eventually says, I'm just overwhelmed. And so what we want to do, what our goal is tonight, is to give you information, not to overwhelm you. It may scare you, and I'm fine with scaring you just a little if that motivates you to make some changes at home or to make some hard decisions. But I think information is power, and so that's what I want to give to you. And you'll hear me use a phrase. I want to help you figure out how to parent the devices in your home, because you have in some ways figured out how to parent the kids that are in your home. And I think these devices have become so much a part of every aspect of our life that they too need to be parented. And so the first thing for me, foundational information, is understanding the power. Because I spent 12 years as the director of digital learning at Grace. And what I found from the high school students I worked with there was that they didn't understand the power that this had. So I'm going to give you two examples, one good and one bad. You can decide which one is good and which one is bad. Y'all recognize this. 2009, it was Miracle on the Hudson. So the plane crash lands safely in the middle of the Hudson. Giannis Crooms had his phone, he took that picture. Twitter was 2 years old, and Jack Dorsey was thinking about shutting it down because it just hadn't gained enough traction. We don't understand that in the year of our Lord 2022, that's hard to say. Because Twitter's everywhere, everybody's using Twitter. But he took this picture, he had 170 followers, and here's where our kids need to understand the power. They really do think, when I post this to my however many followers, that's who's going to see it. So, Giannis posts this, 170 followers. It takes about an hour to get to shore, and when it gets to shore, within an hour, 4.9 million retweets. That's not how far it eventually went. It went much farther. So, let's say for your kids, if your kid is on social media and they post something and it's really good, then those 4.9 million going viral is awesome. I don't know about you, sometimes at our dinner table, my kids have not said the brightest things. And I don't want 4.9 million thinking my daughter really says and believes and understands that. So that's one, that's how fast it amplifies what we say. Look at the next one. Next one is a 3-second. Oh, it already is up there. Dance is going to be hard. So, 3-second video. How bad can it be? Mimi Groves was a freshman in high school in 2016. She was so excited to get her driver's permit that she's sitting in the front seat of her car, and she takes her phone and she shoots a 3-second Snapchat video, and she sends it to less than 5 people. And in that 3-second video, she's lip-syncing a rap song. And in those 3 seconds, this little white girl who's real excited about driving lip-syncs the rap song, and the rap song, as most do, has a racial slur in it. 3 seconds, sent to less than 5 people her freshman year. All Mimi wanted to do, her dream in life, was to go to the University of Tennessee and be on the cheer squad. And her senior year, she made the cheer squad and she got admitted to the University of Tennessee. And the day she posted it on social media, one of her classmates, Jimmy Galligan, had gotten that video in 2016. He was an African-American student at her high school. The racial tension at their high school, in his opinion, was not being addressed by administrators. It was being ignored. He was frustrated. And so he posted her 3-second video. Go switch to the next. And by the end of the day, she'd been dropped from the cheer team. And he said, as you can read, I wanted to get her where she would understand the severity of the word. He wanted to teach her a lesson. And he did. Because now if you Google her name, all the news articles from all over the country are all about this. She has to explain this incident from her freshman year. Think back to your freshman year. Are you still explaining student mistakes you made when you were in high school? No, that's what Mr. Smiley was talking about. That's that digital footprint that stays with our kids. That's why when you put this in their hands, it has to come with a lot of conversations about where this can go and the impact this can have. Because Mimi, all she wanted to do was go to the University of Tennessee, and in the end, they didn't even let her go to the university because they said, look, it's just not safe for you to be here. There's been too much press.
Wow. Yeah. So so we talked about, this is really about one of my experiences as a therapist early on was, as the internet was new, was actually, as smartphones were new, was a young lady who had sent a topless picture of herself, she was 14, to her boyfriend, and he then sent it to 10 of his friends, one of whom was out of state. And when her dad, who was an attorney, found out, he came down really hard, and it was all they could do to keep him from the boy being prosecuted for a federal crime of child pornography, her 15-year-old boyfriend. And so, again, what's going out is part of the conversation. And here's the deal. We can barely comprehend that. We know from, and we don't have time to break down into children and adolescent brain development that much, but cause and effect relationship is the last part of the brain to develop. And so you're talking about someone who by 16, 18 years old is just really starting to actually understand cause and effect relationship, especially at a more philosophical kind of level. So that's a lot of responsibility put in their hands. We know that. But now let's talk about the information. So that's about the information going out. Now let's talk about the information coming in. And this is one of those things, so I want you to stop for a second and think about it. If you were here as couples, talk about it just for a second. What are the access points to the internet in your house? What are the points, the portals that would allow someone to get to an internet browser in your home? So think about that just for a second. Write down the list maybe. Where's some of those access points? Got a good list? All right, so obviously home computer, right? That's everybody's got that one. If you've got a computer in your home, it is one. So you probably all got that one if you've got a computer, right? Smartphones, you probably got that one. Probably you thought of like music, things to do music or little games or stuff like that, little app games. In our family, when they reach a certain age and we decide they're ready, the first thing they do is they get an extremely outdated phone that everything is stripped down except a couple of app games that they like to play, and then that gives us something to ground them from. At that age, it becomes a really handy, like, okay, you're not showing good decision making about that. You're not, and that's all they get is a couple of games that they get to play or whatever, and then we slowly build up. That's how. Now, there's not one right way to do this. That's how our family does. We slowly build up responsibilities like that. But if you don't strip it. And I know people don't have iPods anymore. Did y'all hear, by the way, that as of yesterday, BlackBerry is done. The software will no longer be supported. It will no longer operate. That's right. How many had a BlackBerry? Anybody in the right age? There you go. It's over. It's done. So, moving along. You may have thought of laptops and screens and stuff like that. Obviously, these all go directly. If you do not take these all start with a browser on them, and the browser is set at no restrictions, none. So anything that is on the internet can be accessed directly unless access is taken off of them. Built-in security for the internet borders on worthless. It's not worthless, but it borders on worthless. It's not. If you tell it not to allow explicit stuff, the vast majority of explicit material is not registered as explicit in any way. That's part of what they are. We don't have time today to spend a lot of time talking about the evil of the pornography industry, but the level of evil and intentional pursuit of young people is not. It's not even hidden that they do that. You may or may not have known. So with their gaming system, it gets online and has an unfiltered browser. Some of them you can't even get a filter for the device itself. You can get one for the Wi-Fi system, or you can put in a password that requires a password to go in. But once they're on, we have a PlayStation platform in our house, and it does not. Once they're on, there is not a way to block their access. And so I have to be there. If they're going to be on, I have to be there. I can trace what they've done, but blocking it, unless you have a system for your entire Wi-Fi system to block it. And even then, sometimes it gets around it. But it's not amazing how many parents that I found out later, they catch their kid looking at something inappropriate or having an inappropriate conversation with somebody, and they're sitting in front of their TV, and it's full-blown internet browser because they're PS4 or Xbox. I was stunned to discover that when my children were a little younger, that the Leapfrog device that we had bought them had an unrestricted internet browser built into it. Why would anyone do that? The same question, like, why would this be there? And so it was shocking. So very often children's devices or children-only devices will still have this. You can't count on that to be good. Your smart TV has unrestricted internet access browser opportunities on it. And advertisements, by the way, that come to you that you can click just once to go view something inappropriate. This one scared me a little bit. I didn't know until just recently that a lot of the VR equipment, like the Oculus, which is a standalone VR, you don't have to connect it to anything else, that it has an internet browser built into it as well. So that Oculus you bought your teenager for Christmas, and they're just sitting there in the chair viewing whatever they're viewing, and it's not possible for you to view what they're viewing unless you have the app open. Make sure you can open up that app. The Switch is a little more difficult, so I'm going to cheat a little bit on the Switch. The Switch, you actually do have to download an app in order to get online, but you can. You can get unrestricted internet through the Switch. And the Watch, I didn't know this one because I'm too old. The Watch irritates me because I'm an old person. And so so that's one that apparently it has. You can download an app that gets you directly on. And the new one that's being pushed, that's just now about to come out within the next year or two, are the Apple glasses. That will allow you to be online at any time. Just you can see it, and the person you're talking to can't see it. They see glasses, and you see the internet. And so, be fun. It'll be so fun. And so, this is going to keep happening. This kind of stuff's going to keep happening. And again, I'm not an anti-internet person. I'm not an anti-tech person. Like everything else, they're just powerful. They're tools. And the more powerful a tool is, the more dangerous the river is, the better an expert at navigating you better be, that we have to become. So when it comes to internet and technology stuff, you need to know something about the technological world, and know that. And we'll talk more, in a minute we're going to talk about filters and what filters and blockers and things like that you can put in place for some of these. We'll get there. But anyway, this is let me jump through these on this. All right, so there you go. And the next one, we'll jump
Because of all of those opportunities for our kids to be exposed to whatever the internet has to offer. Sometimes as parents, we think there are safe places that they can go. Let's just be clear, there are no safe places. So just a fast run through of the places you might have thought were safe. Minecraft, Wired magazine. I'm gonna read it. I hate when people read to me in this situation, but I want to get it right. Wired magazine in 2019 found that in Minecraft, several disturbing and grotesque animated Minecraft videos that included an avatar with with heart eyes and a bloody knife smiling at a chained-up woman in a bikini. That's great for your 4-year-old or your 4th grader. A mother and father holding sticks up to a crying toddler, and a woman pregnant with feces about to sit on a man. And before Minecraft took it down, those videos had been viewed tens of thousands of times. Think about the exposure. And thankfully, YouTube gave us, a few years ago, Kids YouTube, which we thought, oh, thank you for that gift. That was so nice of you. And within months after introducing it, they had their Elsa Gate. Do y'all remember that? That's where Elsa, remember from Frozen, was portrayed in graphic, violent little videos and sexual situations. That was great for our littles as well. I don't know, think about when you go to YouTube, you know they have the recommended videos for you. So in, I think it was 2018, Logan Paul, who was the most popular creator on YouTube, had gone to Japan and was at the national park in Japan that I can't pronounce. It's known for a place where people go to die by suicide. And he was there shooting video, and he arrived, and there was a man who had just died. And he's showing the man and laughing. It was the most insensitive, horrible video, and it stayed on the YouTube recommended page for all to see for over 24 hours, even though people kept flagging it. YouTube never took it down. It only got taken down because Logan Paul wouldn't take it down because he just got so much hate from the media over it, thank goodness. They're not out there to help us. So if your kid likes to spend, anybody have sons that like to watch YouTube videos of other boys playing video games? Yeah, it's just not the best place to be unattended. Remember in 2019, Facebook Live, which is such a bad idea. Facebook Live, remember in New Zealand, the mass shooter was 17 minutes of live video of him shooting through the mosque, and Facebook couldn't get it, or wouldn't get it, is my idea, wouldn't take it down for hours. And still on YouTube, you can still find video footage of that 17-minute massacre, because YouTube won't take the measures to take it down. Right before the pandemic, YouTube was alerted to the fact that little girls were posting videos of them showing their gymnastic skills. I watched several of these. Yeah, it was like an 8-year-old comes in from gymnastics, has in her bed, all the videos were little girls in their bedrooms. And the little girls just wanted to show the world what I learned at gymnastics today. So she would do a flip or whatever. And perverts would go and timestamp, sorry to be graphic, crotch shots on these videos. And you know what YouTube did to help fix that? They just removed the comments. And here's the thing. The terms of service on YouTube is 13 and above. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Instead of taking off the videos of kids who shouldn't have been on there anyway, they left the videos up. My point is, our kids are getting exposed to a whole lot of things. And all of those doors that he showed that give us access to the internet, all of those doors, here's the one question I'd like you to ask. Who is getting access to my kid? Who gets access? So if your kid has a YouTube channel and they're creating all this content in the 4th grade, one, their digital footprint is going to be enormous, and they're getting, a lot of people get eyes on them and get to comment on them, and I don't think our kids were built to handle that kind of comments, that number of comments from that number of outside voices.
So the obvious thing, one of the things, and we'll have time, be writing down questions. We will have time for questions at the end in case there's stuff we don't cover. I know I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about pornography. We all know how dangerous pornography can be. And the nowadays, early exposure, we know how dangerous early exposure is. For men my generation, I do a lot of counseling with men of my generation. The average age is between about 3 and 8 for being exposed to pornography. Most of us were exposed to a magazine like Playboy, which is graphic and inappropriate, and it starts wiring processes in the brain that are unsafe. The age has not changed much. It's still between about 3 and 8 when most boys are introduced to pornography. But what they're being introduced to is very different, and how consistently they're being introduced to it is very much so the case. Speaking of exposure. There you go, Dad. And the extreme types of exposure. It's a very different world out there. And if it's unfiltered, it really is honestly one click away. I had to share with a mom the other day, and I knew I didn't have to worry about whether this would work or not. And she said, I don't even understand where my son learned these words and his girlfriend learned these words. Like she said, I literally don't even know where they learned this. And so I just said, okay, well, let me show you. And so I just pulled up my Google, my Gmail, and went to the junk file and just said, here, scan my junk folder. Like I don't go to this anywhere. I've never typed in my email address on any of these. Like, you should go look through my junk folder. And she's scanning through the junk folder and all the invitations to meet up with somebody, to hook up with somebody. They're all fake, but like to hook up, I assume, and then or to go to a website or whatever. And like this is your son's Gmail account has all of these as well. These are automatically discovered through just random searches through that stuff. So it is easy to find. Children have high levels of emotional response to a lot of this kind of stuff as well, but it also starts wiring things in place. And I do think it's totally appropriate for us to deal with this. And once again, I think one of the things, a pattern you're picking up on, and in some way, I know we're preaching to the choir. If you're here, that means you're probably already looking for solutions. You're already working on this. You're already parenting some of these things, which is awesome. And I'm proud of you guys for that. And so you're someone who cares enough to come and go through this, recognizing. So recently when, let's see if that's on the next. Yeah. So to recognize that this is, and the level of exposure, the level of violence in the exposure is super high. The level of misogyny is super high. The even abnormal expression of sexuality is super high. And it's not hard to find. You click on one and you're automatically hitting the others, and they're all pushed pretty strongly. And one of the things I think you're hearing us say is it has to be us who parents this stuff, because we can't count on the companies to do it. Even if they intended to do it, and I don't know how many of them do, that's not possible. A few years ago, Facebook first got in trouble because they had something like 30 or 40 times the number of child pornography reports from Facebook than Dropbox or YouTube or any of the others. And then it was discovered the reason that is because Facebook was the only company that actually filtered their material. None of the others do. And so, of course, there aren't many reports from them. And so, they intentionally create a system where they can't be filtered. So what was the solution? Now, I don't know. I think they actually changed their mind last minute. But the immediate solution was that Facebook then decided they were going to start doing it the way all the other companies were, so they wouldn't have all these reports. And so, again, that's what you can count on. And so we've got to be doing this. You may be familiar with Pornhub, which is famous, obviously, Pornhub. So did y'all hear the news about this? This is in the last year. So 13.5 million videos on the Pornhub webpage, okay? After pressure from credit card companies to verify that it wasn't making money from sex, slavery, or child pornography, the company decided to delete any videos that it couldn't verify as legal. Now this was December of 2020. So of their 13.5 million, how many videos might have been illegal? It turns out that of the 13.5 million, they had to cut them down to under 3 million. 10 million pornographic videos that may have been sex slavery and child pornography. And except for pressure from credit card companies, they were going to do it. The credit card companies didn't want to be linked with this. Like the credit card, Bank of America didn't go to, wait, somebody just spent Bank of America money on a child porn site. Someday somebody's going to come after us because we've got the money, and we don't want that to happen. It was wild. And by the way, it is one of the most regulated of the pornography sites online. Pornhub. So it only gets worse from there. It is fascinating how this stuff plays out and how dark it can get. So just being aware, this is there, and so for us to recognize this isn't the internet is not a safe environment. Again, I know probably everybody here knows this, so I don't want to keep hammering that down. We can spend a lot of time there. I'm not going to. Finally, I'll just tell you, this is not a new thing. What we lack that's how we talk about it. So this is what struck me, and this just came up just this week as I was looking at this. I thought, how was this talked about in the past? Adult predators are not a new thing. We know that's been around a long time. We can write Greek and Roman writings about this kind of stuff. It's been around a long time. And what struck me was what we lack nowadays, one of the things we lack are stories, modern day versions of stories that teach kids, hey, some adults aren't safe. So, and again, we don't even tell the old stories anymore about the Pied Piper or Hansel and Gretel or even Pinocchio. Like these stories there have always been adults who are not safe. Most adults are safe. There have always been some who aren't. And there's always been a way to teach our children about that without terrifying them and yet giving them a healthy respect and fear of there are adults out there that aren't okay. There are things out there that are not okay. So for us to develop the skills again of teaching our kids This isn't about fear. This is about respect of something's power. I teach that to my kids with the use of fire. You need to find some way to teach that things to your kids, whether you're talking about music, movies, or sex, or guns, or the internet, or driving a car. These are powerful things. When something's powerful, we have to learn how to navigate them well, how to use them well. They get out of control, people get hurt. In control, they can be life-giving, like fire. Outside of control, it's not at all. So learning to help our kids do that and learn to come to us. We actually met each other primarily through, you don't have to tell her name or anything, I don't know how she feels about that, but through a young lady who our story. So without going into too much detail,
Yeah. So,
it's important to hear. We're moving to solutions.
what motivated me to get to spend my days doing this kind of stuff and trying to reach out to young parents was because we had a student at Grace who spoke in chapel. We had a chapel where everybody, 5 or 6 students would talk about the mission trip they went on over the summer, and this student was not going to talk about that. Instead, she was letting everyone know her senior year wouldn't be like everyone else's. Because when she was in the 6th grade, 6th, 7th grade, she took her laptop into her room and played Yahoo Pool with some rando guy who was thankfully honest about his age and his name. He was late college age. She was 6th, 7th grade. Laptop into her room. And from 6th grade until her junior year in high school, he groomed her. Now, as I tell this story, you started getting an image in your head of what kind of girl would fall prey to some rando dude on the internet, and whatever picture you have is not of her at all. She is beautiful, smart, National Honor Society, was on the drill team, was on the tennis team, was an accomplished equestrian. It's not the kid you think it is. But from 6th grade and she had friends galore at school, but at home she talked to one person. She even said back when this happened, seems like 5 million years ago.
It's a long time, she's like 24.
That we were still getting cell phone bills in the mail, and she said if her parents, and no condemnation on her parents, but if her parents would have looked at her cell phone bill, she only called and received calls from one number. But he kind of whittled her private world down to just him. He came here to tell her junior year, and he raped her. And it took 3 trials to get him to put him in prison, and he was out before she graduated from college. And I heard that story and said, "Oh, you came here to my city. You did that to one of my kids. I can do something about that." And so that's what this has become, because we can do something better. And just as so you'll stay interested for the last slide, I'm going to give you 5 things. I think it's 5, it might be 4. 5 things that you can do tonight at home. Here's one of them. How about we just decide? Nothing that gets on the internet goes in a bedroom. I don't know about y'all, I dated the same guy, my husband's here today. I dated the same guy all through high school, and we had a rule at our house. You boys didn't go past the guest bathroom. Dating guy off for 4 years. He never saw my room. Never. He would never be able to describe it because that was just the rule. So the rule for 2022 is maybe we just no devices. But remember all his devices he showed? Remember all of those don't go into a bedroom. Maybe.
It's a good one. Here's one of the things we're running into that's fascinating to me, and that's new. In the last 5 years, we started seeing in Alethia something we had never seen before, and there's no documentation of this. We had kids teenagers coming to counseling, 12 and up, come to counseling, not because of the stress they're dealing with and anxiety from their issues, but the stress and anxiety of their friends' issues. So they're coming to counseling, their parents are paying for a counseling appointment, and the kid comes in and says, "I need to talk about my friend so-and-so." And it isn't the old-fashioned, like, if you came in my office and I need to talk about my friend's addiction, I'd be like, "Right, your friend's addiction, got it." No, they mean their friend's addiction, their friend's suicidal tendencies, their friend's anxiety and depression. It's not theirs. They're like, no, I'm fine. But I'm up all night trying to help my friends with this, and I'm up. And the problem is, it's a non-stop messaging. The lives become enmeshed, and the boundaries of where I end and where they begin becomes very messy. And the students don't have the skill sets to delineate that well. Kids going through adolescence, they don't understand where their peer group ends and where they begin. They don't. We know that. So how do they tell a friend, I know you're suicidal, but I've got to be in bed right now? Now, their friend may or may not be suicidal. We actually dealt with it at the church. Just the other day, one of the kids comes up to the student minister and says, hey, you might check on so-and-so. Apparently, he's like on the verge of committing suicide. The student minister goes, oh my gosh. Well, half the kids got it. He posted something on Instagram, and they all got it. And it's like this sad, depressed, I don't need to live thing. So they're all trying to reach out to him. He's not responding. And so they go to the student minister. Of course, that's not the first thing they do. The first thing they do is talk amongst themselves for 20 minutes. Because that's where they're going to solve that problem. But they go to the student minister. No one thinks to call the parents until him. He calls the student. He calls the parents. And the mom's like, I mean, he's right here watching a movie with me. He seems to be fine. She turned to him, are you okay? You're like, yeah, I just had a... She said, apparently there was a thing that went out, a post went out. And he goes, oh, yeah, I was kind of down earlier. Well, we had 50 kids panicked. Well, he's fine. He's watching the movie. Because he's done now. And this going on, the therapeutic issues, this is a real issue.
And it's also, they're always available. Does anyone on the planet need to access your kid 24/7? And does your kid, is there anyone they need access to 24/7? See, the problem is at school, if they have a run-in with a friend at school, and it causes stress at school. When I was in school and that happened, you know what I could do? I could go home and I could go in my room and I could close the door and it was just me and the radio. It wasn't school, but school follows them everywhere. They don't get a break. And even though we like to say, especially because of the pandemic, that our kids need to feel connected, I contend they don't. This isn't making them feel more connected. My daughter spent the last 2 summers out at Pine Cove at the ranch, 6th and 7th grade camp. And this last summer, in particular, we had a bunch of counselors at our house every Saturday doing laundry and listening to them talk. And you know what word I heard over and over and over? Was lonely. That the campers, when they had their big night where they would share, all the kids kept talking about how lonely they were, 6th and 7th graders. See, this just follows them. It carries all the burdens of their friends and of themselves. It goes with them constantly, which is why they need help, because they can't on their own because of their brain development. They can't create their own boundaries. They don't know how to do that. They don't know, like, as a 55-year-old woman, I know I have to put it away sometime, or I need to unfollow some people because they're just bringing me down. We're going long.
Sorry.
Yeah, so let's go look at some solutions. The first one is, put this in your back pocket. You can use this one for a time, and that is COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. That's your first. When your kid wants a social media account, they want their own Snapchat or TikTok. Look, the federal government did us a small favor in 2000, which was before iPhones and before all social media. They came up with this, COPPA. All social media has a minimum age requirement of 13. Believe it or not, if you spend some time and read through YouTube's terms of service, it also has a minimum age requirement of 13. Here's what that means. It wasn't engineered for a kid, the brain of a person under 13. And if your kid right now is under 13 and they have one of those accounts, that means somebody lied. And it means on that app, your kid's going to keep aging outside of their actual age. That's not good. Why? Because those social media companies sell your kids' information. And so now, that phone that you got them because you want them to be able to call you because they're on some sport team and they travel, now they're going to start getting text messages that are appropriate, I say that loosely, for someone who's 18 or 21. I mean, has y'all's phones, just on a personal side, have y'all been like overrun with text messages from nasty things? Can I give you this? If you're with AT&T, you can forward that to 7726. Write that down. Report every one of them. And I've been doing it religiously for quite a while now, and the number of the ones I get is so much less. But let's just say, when your kid gets, you're going to have to talk to your kid. What do you do when you get a text message from somebody you don't know? You got to have that conversation, because I'm thinking a 6th grade boy who gets some of the texts that I've gotten is going to go, what? Really? And click on it. That's just extra.
Just your curiosity, the normal curiosity of a young person that can happen. Let's see. Okay. Okay, you want to comment on the...
Parent the device. Can we parent the device? Here's what that means, set boundaries. Because our kids can't, and they need it. So what does that mean? That means setting time restrictions. But if you set a time restriction and say on the weekends you can only do 2 hours, or let's be really generous, 3 hours, you have to be able to fill that time. And I know that's why we don't do it. That's why we don't do strict time limits, just because now I got to come up with something for them to do. But here's what every teacher and administrator will tell you. If you want your kid to do well in school, there's a skill that they've lost. This generation is completely lost, and here it is, and you can teach it. You start teaching your kid tonight, and that is boredom. And you laugh, but our kids can't. They don't know how to go from home to Brookshire's without a screen entertaining them. And look, I get it. It's painful to be in your car and have to listen to all that and answer all the 50 million questions. But here's where you'll pay for it, I guarantee you. If you keep having the screen on every time they're in the car, when it's time for them to drive, they won't know the names of streets in this town, and there aren't that many. In fact, what we found at Grace was kids were postponing getting their driver's license because they were so unaware of what was going on in the driver's seat because they never really paid attention to it. So I'm telling you, if you want your kids' grades to improve, you'll start trying to develop that skill of boredom. I developed it somewhere between Dallas and New Mexico on a long drive with my family. That's a long, I need counseling. You don't have that thing.
I told those who are here in my church, thalassophobia is the fear of being bored. And I had, like me going on a sabbatical coming up, my biggest fear about being on sabbatical is being bored.
Really?
I have the actual phobia. My wife said to me one day, she's like, on my last sabbatical, she goes, you need to learn why you're so afraid of being bored. I said, I'm not afraid of being bored. And then I started to go into isolation for 60 hours, total isolation for 60 hours. And I realized I was having low-level anxiety attacks, thinking about like not having a watch, not having a book, not having a way to escape me. And so it's like, and I do this stuff for a living, and I'm still...
I talked to teachers, high school teachers who did everything they could to teach bell to bell, and I was like, why? Can you give the kid, and this particular teacher who had poor classroom management, she was like, they don't know what to, if I say, take the last 5 minutes to deal with your life, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know.
All right, let's talk just for a minute because we gotta pick this up. So here's a few guidelines, and this slide actually could have been in a different order if we did it again. I'll call it boundaries first. In fact, I'm going to cheat and jump ahead to the boundaries conversation to start there, and then I'll come back here. Kids need boundaries. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but they actually do, and they don't like them. Both of those are true at the same time. And so just recognizing that the measure of success of boundaries isn't whether your child approves of those boundaries. And at no point does that become the case. In fact, if they don't like the boundary, that usually is a good sign. If at least they're kind of like, I don't know about that, because you're kind of challenging them. I use the example, again, without going into much detail when I teach this, of watching a guy drive over an overpass that was unfinished. It was totally done except for the 2 rails, the 3-foot-tall concrete rails. And he's driving down the middle going about 2 miles an hour in a truck. They're going to put up 3-foot concrete rails and people are going to drive 40 miles an hour on that very same thing. Human beings need boundaries. We feel safe with boundaries. And the job of boundaries are to be pushed against, and children development is to push against them. Don't take it personally when you're 3-year-old, your 8-year-old, your 12-year-old, your 16-year-old, your 19-year-old, when they push against boundaries that you have. That's part of their job. They're gaining, actually, we know they're gaining security from pushing against the boundary and it not moving. Part of why they do it. It's like the 8-year-old who gets grossed out when mom and dad give each other hugs and kisses, right? They can't look away, but the ooh, gross, but they have a huge smile on their face and they're watching the whole time, right? Because the truth is they're saying ooh, gross, and their heart is feeling safe in that moment, right? It's the same kind of thing. So now back to, here's some examples of some boundaries that I recommend. You have to decide what yours are in your home and what they are in your family, but here's some of the ones, and they probably overlap quite a bit here. So one is no password protection from parents. I don't believe in locks on kids' doors. I don't believe in passwords on kids' devices. I mean, they have them. You just know them. If they have a lock on the door, that's fine. You just have a key. They have a password to their phone, fine. That's good for other people not to get in. You can get in. In fact, today, it blows me away. Today, there was a report, and I was trying to find it real quick because I didn't have time to look for it today. There was a report that came out today, New York Times, I think, that referenced a father who was in an ongoing running battle with his daughter about TikTok. That he blocked her off of it, then she figured out another way to get it, and so he changed the password, and I think it was on Al Mohler today on the briefing. And at some point, I was like, why isn't he taking the phone away? Like, at some point, it seems like, I gave you this instruction, you just broke it. That's now my phone. I mean, it was always my phone. It's now not your phone. But I see power struggles with parents all the time with this. And part of it is they don't start early enough. So you want to start very early with kids understanding this is what's normal. What's normal is you don't have passwords. Not for me. I know your passwords. I set your passwords. These are things that I'm in control of. Not to be overly strange about this, but I grew up training dogs with my family. We train dogs, and one of the first things you do with a puppy is when it's little, you turn it over and you spread its paws out and mess with its teeth and its gums, and it learns that that's normal. You're the boss. You have the authority to do that. And so when it gets a thorn in its paw, it's not going to bite you when you stretch its fingers because it knows, oh, this is what we do. But when my kids, each of them, when they get old enough to learn that not everyone has quiet time every day from 12:30 to 1:30 or 12:30 to 2, they're all freaked out about like, what do you mean your family doesn't have rest time? I thought everybody did, and they're because they didn't know any difference. Now they do the same thing. So no password protection from parents. Of course, it's fine for others. That's one. 2 is you do have password protection on everything else. The kids, and I know that's a pain. My kids have to find me with the PS4 remote and hope that it's within Wi-Fi distance for me to type in the password or that I'm willing to walk over. And if I'm not, that just means they can't get on right now until I'm ready to walk to type in the password. So that type of thing, it is a little bit more of a pain. The joke here that I put in the article, in the stuff, was that when I grew up, gun control meant using both hands to aim. You want to avoid getting in a gunfight. Obviously, I want to avoid getting in a gunfight. If I get in a gunfight, I want to make sure I survive it. We want to avoid our children getting in trouble online, and we also want to make sure they have the tools that if they do get in trouble online, they know how to walk away from it and still be alive. They're not kicked out of the school. They're not kicked out of the program. They're not, put under arrest. They're not sued for that. So one is that you protect and you prepare. You protect the child, but then you're also preparing the child. You don't just do it blindly. You let them know. It's an ongoing conversation. They can come to you, and you want them. I got one of those scary moments when I had a client, a teenage girl who had been raped, tell me she didn't tell her dad because she just knew her dad would go kill the guy. She was like, then I'll lose my dad and what else I lost. So I had to go to my daughters and say, hey, you may have the assumption that if somebody raped you, I would go murder them. And then you'd lose me too. You need to know, I promise I'll be smart. I promise you I'm going to murder them, but I promise you I won't get caught. I promise I will be wise. You can trust me. So having those ongoing conversations, letting them understand that this is important. They can come to you. They need to come to you. You don't freak out. You don't panic. You have those conversations, and you can talk about being imperfect as well, and all of that. It's important that your kids know that you put these things in place. So these are a couple. I don't know if you recommend these in particular.
So my question is, if you lock your doors at night, don't you? I live in a safe neighborhood, we lock all 3 doors. So if I'm going to do that, could you please, if you do nothing else, can you at least filter the internet at your house? Even if you've got littles and they're not getting on the internet, just for you and your spouse or your partner, could you do it just so that is the normal that your kids are raised in, that some websites are just not accessible at our house. So the first one up there, and there are so many on the market, you can do your own research. Here are 2 examples. Circle used to be Circle by Disney. Disney let it go. I put that one up there just because it's the easiest one to set up from my research. It's the easiest one. You can go to YouTube and watch tons of videos on how to set it up and how kids have been able to get around it. Because you should watch those videos too, just so you know. And then Bark's the leader in this area. They're great for cell phones and all of your internet stuff. But specifically for cell phones, they'll automate the time restrictions. They just make it easier. It's a little more challenging to set up if your kid already has an iPhone, because Apple is not the friend of the parent. They're going to make it challenging for you. So just know going in, you're going to have to do a little bit of research, but they're doing a good work. And here's the thing. When you decide your kid gets a cell phone, this isn't the only expense. You're going to have to pay more. Yeah, there are free ones out there. You get what you pay for. And I also hesitate sometimes to spend much time on the monitoring part, because here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to trust it, because it's never going to be 100%, but it's just not. And so don't go to sleep at night thinking all is well, and you haven't ever, you've gone weeks without ever looking at your kid's device. You still need to do that.
Yes, we use Covenant Eyes, but the same thing is true. All of them have limitations, and the best protection is to use one of these and be invested and engaged. When I called Covenant, I was frustrated about something, and they told me, yeah, we're not, the apps don't allow us to run Covenant Eyes in their apps. I was like, oh, so then it doesn't block anything inside of another app. They can't legally do that. There's a VPN set up. It can take screenshots. It can do that, but they're not even allowed to take screenshots in certain apps because that's copyrighted material. So it's just everybody's resisting this process, unfortunate. But you need these filters, you need the reports. If nothing else, just to hold them accountable and yourself accountable. I want it for me too. And then it's a way to check, it's a way to go back and look, even if it misses it, and that kind of stuff. But so you need that, and then you need to be invested and engaged with what's going on. Okay, moving quickly. Yep, I'm going to skip.
Go to sex.
Okay. That one? Okay. So we're going to go, just to reference quickly this here, go ahead and say, make yours.
Here's what I'm going to beg you. If you want to, you need to be the one that talks to your kids about sex.
Right.
It's awkward for all of us. We'll all admit it. It's awkward for all of us. And it's not, I hate the phrase, the talk, because it's not one talk, it's not one conversation. It's a long conversation over the course of their time with you. Because here's what I know to be true. If you think back to the slide that had Pornhub knows that we don't want to talk to our kids about sex, and they want customers for life, just like Adidas and Nike. And so they created their own sex ed program within their site. Here's what I know to be true. First of all, this is a really good book. And the reason I like it is because I like the author. Her parents didn't talk about sex. And if you don't talk about sex, you're saying something. Mm-hmm. You're saying, I don't want to talk to you about sex. And so if you've made that clear to your kid by not saying anything, guess who stands at the ready to talk to them? Google. And Google will send them straight to Pornhub. And I think after they've done all of that, they'll end up, did you see the quote from Billie Eilish? What a gift I hate it for her. She said that watching porn at such an early age had ruined her brain.
Yep.
She has a lasting impact. Anyway, y'all can go look that up.
Lady Gaga said the same thing this week, by the way.
Really?
Lady Gaga came out and said early introduction to pornography ruined so many things for her.
So please talk to your kids about sex. And the earlier you do it, the more normal it becomes. So that when they have questions, you're the one they go to rather than when they hear, if you're going to I say this to high school parents all the time, if you let your daughter binge Grey's Anatomy all spring break, things are going to come up. She's going to have questions. If you haven't addressed them, she's going to look for answers on Google, and I don't think you're going to like how things end up. So.
Yeah, that's good. Also have on my website, chrislegg.com, I have a plan for talking to your kids about sex, how we've done it in our home, and a strategy for how you do that. So again, that's chrislegg.com, and hopefully your web blocker won't block you from going to that page. Mine has blocked me from going to my page before, but yeah, exactly. We talk about sex a lot, but
not all your pages.
not all of them, just the ones that say pornography in the title. Right? That's okay. So, but to create a plan, if you need to come and work out a plan, we will at Alethia will help you do that, or I'll help you do that to create that. We need to be doing that. Here's the way I was asked early on: what topics do you want to make sure you're the main voice for it? If that's a topic that you want to be the main voice for it, their relationship with God, how they treat people in authority, etc., then you need to make sure you're the first voice and the main voice for it. And you're going to do that. They're not coming to you for that. That's asking the child to parent themselves. So for us to be initiating those conversations is huge, huge. And it's doable. It's not as scary as you think. It's not as hard as you think. And the feedback we're getting right now as therapists, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you asked teenagers, what do you want from your parents? They said, leave me alone. Now we ask teenagers what they want from their parents, and the answer almost universally is, I wish they would spend time with me. And so we have to try. Now we have 10th graders teaching their families how to have game night once a week because the parents are so disconnected. But the teenager doesn't have that luxury. I'm jumping ahead to the action plan.
I give you 4 things.
This is the part of the action
If you wait till keep going.
Yep.
Right there. Yeah.
Go ahead, you're good.
So, first thing, and we've already said this, is go ahead and play.
Yep.
No devices in the bedroom. How about we just agree? That's where we'll start. No devices that can get on the internet go into the bedroom. Next one is technology curfew. Here's what we didn't talk about. Brain development. Our kids are overstimulated by all the screens and all the stuff. It's constantly serving them up little doses of dopamine, and they are overstimulated. That's why if you take the screen away, your kid blows up. That's when you know you kind of have a problem. But how about you decide as a family, hey, we're going to turn all the screens off, all technology off, an hour before bedtime. That lets their little brain start resting and getting ready to go to sleep. It also will help ears as well. But that's a hard one for us adults. But I think it's better if we all do it as a family. Charge all devices, and this is mainly when your kids all have their own personal devices. How about everybody charge in the same place? And at my house, that was in my room, and you better turn it off. Because if your kids whose parents don't love them enough, let them text at 2 o'clock in the morning or call at 2 o'clock in the morning, my answer will not be very Christian. And here's the strange thing. Our son is 25 years old. When he comes home, he still plugs his phone in downstairs in the kitchen, which just makes my mom leap with joy. The last one is I started saying this one literally 8 years ago, and I've watched over the course of time this becomes very controversial. So, moms, you're the problem with this one. Here's the idea behind it, and you can just think about it, how if it would work for you. It's just an idea. And that is, when you have a party, you didn't invite everyone over, because we just can't. How about you take up cell phones, like greet them with a nice Joanna Gaines basket, and they put them in. I'm not saying you're locking them up and they don't have access. I'm saying put it in a nice basket and put it on the island in the kitchen. so that if there's an emergency or the kid starts to have anxiety, they can go pick it up. And I'm just saying that we're not, because what I've found is what kids with phones, you have the kids with phones and the kids without phones. And the kids without phones get left out of everything. So when they come to your house, but here's what you have to do. You have to tell the other moms, hey, when we're at the party, I'm just going to take up all their phones. I'm going to put them in a pretty basket. It'll be on the island. And some moms will say no because for reasons. And you'll just say, that's awesome. Then you won't, then maybe you don't feel comfortable coming. It's the same parents that you go, are all your guns locked up at your house? And they say no. And you go, okay, well, you're not safe. We want to come to your house. It's that same kind of, idea. So if you want to take a picture of that, feel free. Just some ideas that we've kind of crowdsourced over the last few years, just to give you a place to start. So you're not as overwhelmed, so you feel like you have some control. That's.
I've got one more to add. The one more I'm going to add for the plan, and then we'll open up for questions, is get involved with what your kids are doing. And so if one of the things we've done that's been good at our home is we have 2 Apple IDs, one for the girls and one for the guys. And so everything one of my sons downloads shows up on my phone. Anything I download shows up on theirs, by the way, which is really good accountability too. But what that means is they can go to a new game, we start talking about it. It sounds interesting to me. I'm now playing with them on that game. It gives us something to talk about because just saying no isn't sufficient. You got to fill something in with that. And so you can turn these into a positive that you go, I don't like playing the games they play. But you need to be engaging with what they're doing, maybe playing the games they play. So you can see what's actually happening in that game. You could be there when something inappropriate appears in a game that looked otherwise appropriate, and at least to have the conversation and to recover from that moment. And so I'm a big fan of be involved in the stuff they're involved in. Know their friends, including their online friends, have those type of connections. So there you go. That's kind of covers the basics. Those are create some good plans in mind. If you need anything from us at Alethia, or you need anything from Christina at Neptune Navigate, just let us know. And now we're open for questions. Ready to go. Yes, you're first. That was fast, by the way. Both of you like.
I have been thinking about it. My daughter learns better usually from other people or listens better, I guess, than from what we tell her. So is there a program or a video you would recommend about when it's time for her to get her own device that would teach her about how to be safe online or how to protect herself? Do you guys recommend anything that would be kid-friendly, for her?
I just don't think you can advocate this. I don't think you can advocate it. I think so you can encourage others to step alongside with you, which that's what I would say. So I would say, yes, you do it, and then your best bet is another adult who they know or trust. So you might ask them, hey, who's an adult who you respect, who you trust? And if they give you a name that you also respect and trust, set up coffee for them. We don't have time for all of them. I got a whole seminar that's 3 times as long just on parenting adolescents. And I think one of the top 3 or 4 mistakes that most parents of adolescents make, is they don't involve other adults in their adolescent's life. Because you're right, we usually go through a phase where we're idiots. Everybody else's parents seem pretty cool. Why are you an idiot? Right. And of course their friends think you're pretty cool. Just their parents are idiots. And so that's a normal transitional developmental thing. Not strange, but to say, is there a teacher that you just set up coffee with them with who you trust? Is there another adult? So you say it, and you're right, that may fall a little bit on deaf ears, because it's you, and you're an idiot. But when so-and-so's mom tells them the same stuff, all of a sudden it's brilliant, and they say it. And then you just have to tell them how smart they are when they come back and tell you, did you know what Mrs. So-and-so said? It is great. They're like, yes, I've said that like 40,000 times. It doesn't matter. You say, I'm so proud that you're smart enough to pick up on that. But yes, that's what I would say. I don't know of a program or a video. I would be so hesitant with that anyway. Do you know of one that you would try?
It's what we do.
Do you create one? Have you created one?
We create, yes.
I didn't know about yours. Tell me about it. It's a material curriculum.
We have curriculum for schools.
Change my answer.
It's okay.
No, don't change. Add to my answer.
Yes, we have a curriculum for schools K through 12. That's all of that. the part of it that I always tell our people that I'm most proud of is, so we have 8 modules for kids. It's broken down by age group. And then each module for staff, because school staff, sometimes the age gaps, they're not, anyway. But we also have each module for parents. And it explains what we've told the kids, and then it gives discussion questions to continue the conversation, to help you start some of these conversations that we've been talking about. I don't know if you go to church or where you go to church. We also have a product for churches that we give away for free. So if you want to see me afterwards, I can give you that kind of information. You can do that. So you have to do.
I like to change my answer.
I was loving standing here through that answer. I was starting to sweat. My husband was looking at me like.
It's a combination of.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's the both.
Guided learning.
It's the both.
I love that. Now I got to get my hands on that. How did I know?
I can hook you up.
You got to know someone.
Yeah.
You had a question as well.
Yeah, so pop-up ads like within apps and stuff, will the Circle or the BART program like stop those? Or like, because we're real cheap, we don't pay for a lot of apps, so maybe that's why it's a lot of pop-up ads. Like if you pay for the app, you won't have those as much.
Right.
So we need to probably.
You can try an ad blocker. It doesn't work. I mean, it does.
Within apps, it almost never.
Yeah.
Okay.
Within an app,
It's
it's
not.
almost impossible.
Because that's how they're making it.
That's how they make their money. And so part of it is, some apps, it's just not a big deal. What their pop-up ads are totally tame.
Yeah.
But some of them aren't at all. They're like match sites and worse.
Yeah.
Those, you either bite the bullet and you pay for it,
Yeah.
or you delete it.
Okay.
And so that's, our kids, again, one of the normalizations in our family is, if it's got inappropriate stuff on it, it's going away.
Yeah.
And so it just is, sorry.
Yeah.
And if we can find a way to get that stuff off of it, then we'll get the stuff off of it and you can keep it. If we can't, it has to go away.
Okay. I didn't know if there was a program that could block.
And I just so you know, like, I'm the worst addict at this stuff. Like, I personally am so addicted to this type of stuff. That's why I don't do certain things. And I don't have certain things on my phone or whatever. My kids tease me because they'll get interested in an app game and I'll start playing it with them. And in 3 weeks they're bored and they quit. And 4 years later, I'm still playing the game. And so, but what will happen is then I have a whole section, I have a page where I put the ones that I haven't. But I'm like, I wonder what life would be like without this one. And I move it over there and I leave it alone. And always within a week, I have no interest in playing. So the chemicals apparently die out enough that I can walk away from it. But yeah.
Anybody else? We bored them too.
No.
Yeah.
Covered a lot of ground. Anybody else got something else that you do that would be helpful for everybody else in the room to hear?
I have to say, what Mr. Smiley said about the gap phone, we use that for, my son's 15 and he has a gap phone. And yes, he doesn't have access to the internet and things like that, but he only has the ability to talk or text. And to me, it's a great way to introduce a phone to, because even though texting, you can get into trouble. He's already figured that out, that, what he put down and sent to somebody, it doesn't come back to them and you can press delete. Things like that, are good ways to help introduce phones, to what social media would be like too.
Yeah. It's the same concept of driving, of that, learner's permit kind of thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, just to piggyback on that, I don't have a gap phone for my son, but this year he's in 5th grade. He got a text from another girl who I didn't know about. Japanese anime, 2 females kissing. I'm a lesbian. Do you want, and so this just opened I need to get on it.
Yes.
So even without the internet, there's still. I didn't even know this girl. So
Yeah.
big awakening for me. So thank y'all for doing this, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think a part of the discussion we kind of have is watching other kids' phones. So my son might not have access, but other kids at school do. And so talking about I don't want you, which I can't parent really well, but I'm not there. I don't want you looking over someone else's shoulder. Because I'm not parenting their device, you know? And I imagine that only gets harder as you get older.
I will tell you, one of the things that's been interesting, and I like the sleepover, especially the sleepover, which is, is a wonderful experience for all children and has caused probably as much damage. Also, like it's the problem is parents let children socialize one another, and that you've all read Lord of the Flies, like that doesn't usually go well. And so a parent needs to be involved, and a sleepover included. You do a sleepover, great, well, parents are going to be involved. The idea of taking up phones, I think, is a necessity. In fact, taking up any internet access is a necessity if there's not a parent there, because it's so difficult for young people to say no to one another. Shockingly, I mean, the research is that they aren't bulletproof. They think this is going to be awful, and they do it anyway, because it's just almost impossible for them to say no, unless they said no in advance. Let me comment on that since we have 1 or 2 minutes. Especially with adolescents, what we've learned is when adolescents make a decision in advance of the moment, they typically stick with it. And so if they decide in advance, what are you going to do when someone hands you a cigarette? And you go, ooh, I'm going to say no thanks. Okay, that's what you're going to say, no thanks. So if I hand you a cigarette, you go like, ooh, no thanks, yes. That's actually probably pretty close to what they'll do. But if they have to make the decision in the moment, they will say okay, if they haven't already made the decision. Y'all remember True Love Waits? They were all of its foibles. Kids who went through True Love Waits and who made a purity commitment and said they weren't going to have sex until they were married. It was an incredibly high predictor of that child not engaging in sex for 6 months. And then it started slowly decreasing, and in 1 year they were back to the national average. But if you did it every year, what happened was they kept it because they made the decision in advance, and then they could typically stick with it. What's really heartbreaking is to discover that in groups, teenagers typically all want to make the right decision, but none of them will be the one who says it. And so what happens is if one of them will say, hey, this is a bad idea, all of them they will interview kids after a bad decision, and all of them thought it was a bad idea, and none of them would say it. And so they didn't want to be the one teased. And so they will say, like, if one of them will say, yeah, no thanks, what's shocking is then all the rest of them go like, yeah, no, me either. No, I'm not. No, I think that's gross too. But if one of them doesn't say it first, all of them will end up doing it. So that's why when we take up phones for a sleepover or something like that, and they now have, for a sleepover, I would actually say, it's with you. They can get it. If they have a panic attack and they need mom, come and tell me. I'll happily give you your phone. But you don't want them getting it in the middle of the night and then they're all playing something inappropriate. So it's just, yeah.
One of the conversations that I like to tell parents, especially if you have sons, is have the conversation, prepare your son for what he's going to do when he gets an inappropriate picture texted to him, because he will. He won't even, it'll happen even if he doesn't ask for it. Yes. He needs to know what to do with that, and the first thing is don't forward it to anyone. It's best if he show it to you and go, and then delete it, but not to forward it on. And you got to tell your daughters what to do, how to respond in advance to when they're asked for that picture, because they'll be asked.
Yes, indeed.
They'll be asked by not your son, but from the big kids. It's rampant. Right. It's rampant. So. Let's end on that kind of.
See that the book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures.
Yeah.
Teaching them.
Little.
Come talk to me immediately. You see something, like turn your eyes away and come tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yep. There's plenty of stuff, and here's the good news: parents who are invested and engaged and involved, their kids typically navigate this stuff pretty well. They may get something. Plenty of us do. I mean, again, like I was 5 when I saw my first pornography. Yes, that changes brain wiring. Yes, that's an issue I have to manage the rest of my life, and I'm managing pretty well. And so, because parents are involved and engaged and able to do that, we can help our kids navigate through even these dangerous waters. We'll be perfect, but if we're there, that's the number one predictor of success is parental engagement with kids all the time. So we're there. We'll do it. Thank you, Mr. Smiley, for setting this up.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
My children don't like me. That's okay. But one of the things is, I told my wife, I draw lines in the sand on certain stuff, and I'm very forward thinking. and I've drawn a line in the sand on a certain issue, and I won't move. And I've been proactive. Y'all know we're Leader in Me campus, and we practice those 7 habits, and one of them is being proactive. Like, I think so far in advance on certain things, and you have to love your kids more than how much you care what other parents think about you. Like, I don't care. If you are not okay with me taking your child's phone, then your child doesn't need to be here, and I don't care what you think about me. And that's what y'all have to do, is draw lines in the sand on things. Your kids are going to try and push that line. They're going to talk about their friends and what their parents allow and all that. But if you've already drawn that line in the sand, you've already thought through it, you've already prepped your kids that, hey, at 15, you're not going to get blah, 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 just because your friend's parents said at 15 they're going to get TikTok and cell phone and all that. That doesn't mean that. I'm not their parent, they're not your parent. So anyways, I appreciate all y'all investing in your kids showing up here. This has been recorded. I'll end up sending out that YouTube video link, try to get other people to watch it. I know both of them, they'll answer emails if y'all have any other questions. So please take some of these snacks, bring your kids over here, give them a bunch of cookies. Do not give no coffee for the kids this late. So anyways, thanks again for all y'all being here. It's 7:27, so I think we're 3 minutes early. Thanks again.
Flyers.